I always thought my life with Emily was a quiet masterpiece, painted in soft strokes of routine and trust. We'd been married for 12 years, living in a modest house on the edge of Portland, where the rain tapped our windows like a metronome to our days. I'm Jacob, mid-40s, an accountant with a penchant for order, a man who found comfort in numbers and the predictability they promised. Emily was my opposite, a freelance photographer, chaotic and vibrant, her auburn hair a wild cascade that mirrored her spirit. Our daughter, Mia, was 10, a perfect blend of us both. My hazel eyes, her mother's boundless curiosity. Life felt steady, a rhythm I could count on. That rhythm faltered one Tuesday in late February. I'd come home early from the office, a rare break from tax season's grind, carrying a bag of groceries for a surprise dinner. Emily's car was in the driveway, but the house was eerily still. No hum of her editing music, no clatter of Mia's toys. I called out, my voice swallowed by the silence. Then I heard it. A low murmur from upstairs, a sound that didn't belong. My stomach tightened, a knot of instinct I couldn't name. I climbed the stairs, each creak underfoot amplifying the unease. The bedroom door was ajar. I pushed it open and froze. There she was, Emily, tangled in our sheets, her body pressed against someone else. Not just anyone. It was Greg, my brother. My younger brother, the one I'd pulled out of every mess since we were kids. His failed businesses, his broken relationships, all patched up with my patience and cash. They didn't notice me at first, too lost in their moment, their breaths heavy and synchronized. I stood there, a statue of disbelief, watching my wife and my sibling in a tableau that shredded every assumption I'd ever held. I didn't scream. I didn't charge in. I backed away, silent as a ghost, and retreated downstairs. The grocery bag sat on the counter, a pathetic symbol of the life I'd thought I had. My mind raced, piecing together the clues I'd missed. Emily's late nights, shooting events, Greg's sudden visits to catch up. How long had this been brewing? How blind had I been? I poured a glass of water, hands trembling, and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wall. Revenge wasn't a word I'd ever lived by, but it bloomed in me then, dark and inevitable. The next few days, I played the part of the oblivious husband. Emily kissed my cheek each morning, her lips tasting of deceit, while Greg texted me about a Seahawks game like nothing had changed. I smiled through it, my mask flawless, but inside, I was a furnace of rage and calculation. I needed evidence, a foundation for whatever I'd build next. So I started small, checking her phone when she showered, her laptop when she slept. Passwords were easy. She'd never changed them from Mia's birthday. What I found wasn't just betrayal, it was a chronicle of audacity. Messages stretched back months. Miss you already, Greg wrote after a family barbecue I'd hosted. Can't wait to feel you again, Emily replied. Time-stamped while I'd been grilling burgers. Photos, too intimate, brazen, taken in our bed, our car, even the cabin we'd rented last summer. One stood out. Emily laughing, her head on Greg's chest, captioned, Our little secret. Our little secret. The phrase seared into me, a brand on my pride. I saved everything to a hidden drive, my accountant's precision-turned weapon. Work became my refuge, a place to think without her eyes on me. I'd sit in my cubicle, spreadsheets forgotten, plotting. Revenge couldn't be simple, confrontation, divorce, a fist to Greg's jaw. That was too small for the hole they'd carved in me. It had to be meticulous, a slow unraveling they'd never see coming. I remembered a client, Victor, a private investigator I'd helped with tax filings. Discreet, ruthless, expensive. I called him that Friday, voice steady as I said, I need dirt, deep dirt. He didn't ask why, just named his price. I agreed without blinking. At home, I watched them. Emily's casual eyes. Late shoot tonight, don't wait up. And Greg's drop-ins, all brotherly grins. Mia sensed nothing, chattering about school while I nodded, my mind elsewhere. I began to notice the quirks of their affair. The way Emily's perfume lingered on Greg's jacket, the faint scratch marks on his neck he'd laugh off as cat trouble. No cat, just my wife. The details fueled me, each one a brick in the wall I'd build around them. Victor delivered faster than I'd hoped. 2 weeks later, we met in a diner off I-5, rain streaking the windows. He slid a folder across the table, thick with photos, audio clips, even hotel receipts. "They're sloppy," he said, sipping coffee. "Your brother's got a mouth, too," brags to his buddies at the gym. I opened the folder, my pulse a drumbeat. There they were, Emily and Greg at a motel, her car parked outside. A grainy shot of them in a bar, hands entwined. A recording of Greg laughing, saying, "Jake's too busy counting pennies to notice." The cruelty of it, their mockery, cut deeper than the act itself. I'd been their fool, their punching bag. Victor leaned in. "There's more. Greg's been skimming from you. That loan you gave him last year went to a new truck. Not his business." I remembered that loan. $15,000. My savings drained to help family. Emily had pushed me to do it, her eyes soft with fake concern. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was a heist of my trust, my money, my life. I drove home, folder hidden in my briefcase, and watched Emily cook dinner. She hummed, oblivious, while Mia drew at the table. I wanted to smash something, to scream the truth, but I held it in. Revenge needed patience, a sculptor's touch. That night, I lay beside her, her warmth a lie against my skin, and planned. Greg's arrogance was my opening. He loved attention, craved admiration. Emily's weakness was her art, her need to be seen as brilliant. I'd use both. The idea came at 3 a.m., sharp and cold. A public unraveling, humiliation so complete they'd never recover. I'd start with Greg, the weaker link. He'd always been a show-off, posting his life online. Gym selfies, truck pics, cryptic quotes about living free. I'd feed that ego, let it grow fat and careless, then cut it open for the world to see. Emily would follow, her pride dragged through the mud she'd made. I began with Greg. He'd always fished for compliments, so I gave them subtle, strategic. "That truck's a beast," I'd say when he visited, or "You're looking sharp, man." He'd grin, chest puffed, never suspecting I was baiting him. I suggested a guy's night at a sports bar, knowing he'd invite his crew, loud, loyal idiots who'd amplify anything he did. I brought Victor along, disguised as an old college buddy, his camera hidden in a watch. Greg drank too much, talked too loud, and let slip enough to bury himself. "Emily's a wild one," he slurred, arm around me like we were conspirators. "You're lucky, Jake, but I'm luckier." His friends laughed, clueless, while Victor recorded. I smiled, bile rising, and toasted him. "To family," I said, the irony a blade in my gut. The footage was gold, vague enough to dodge suspicion, damning enough to hint at truth. I filed it away, a piece of my puzzle. At home, I turned to Emily's world. She'd been prepping for a gallery show, her big break, months of late nights and whispered calls I now knew weren't about lighting or lenses. I praised her work, fed her ego, even offered to help with the budget. "You deserve this," I said, watching her glow. She didn't know I'd already contacted the gallery owner, an old client, planting seeds of doubt about her inspiration. I'd let her climb, then pull the ladder out. Mia's innocence kept me grounded. She'd hug me, oblivious, and I'd hold her tighter, the only pure thing left. But even that fueled my resolve. Emily and Greg had tainted our family, and they'd pay. I started small leaks. An anonymous tip to Greg's gym buddies about his secret. A forged receipt emailed to Emily's assistant. Tiny cracks, widening slowly. The cracks grew. Greg's buddies started asking questions. He dodged them, but I saw the sweat on his brow when he visited next. Emily, too, seemed off, checking her phone more, her smiles tighter. I kept my routine, the dutiful husband, while Victor dug deeper. He found gold. A burner phone Greg had stashed, filled with messages to Emily and, surprise, another woman. My brother, the multitasker. I almost laughed. It was perfect, another thread to pull. I decided to escalate. Using a fake account, I posted a blurry bar photo of Greg and Emily on a local forum, Captioned, "Who's this couple?" No names, just enough to stir curiosity. Within hours, comments speculated, friends of friends, nosy neighbors. Greg called me, panicked. "Some jerk's messing with me online. Help me track it, Jake?" I feigned concern, promised to look into it, and let the rumor mill churn. Emily saw it too. I caught her staring at her laptop, pale, before she slammed it shut. Her gallery show loomed. A week away. I met the owner again, casually mentioning concerns about plagiarism in Emily's portfolio. Half true, based on old work she'd tweaked. He frowned, said he'd investigate. I knew he'd find nothing concrete, but the doubt would fester. Meanwhile, I sent Greg an anonymous text from a burner. "We know about you and her. Pay up or it's public." He didn't tell me, but Victor tracked him pacing outside a bar. Frantic. At home, I cooked dinner, kissed Mia's forehead, and watched Emily unravel. She snapped at me over nothing. Spilled wine, a late bill, her guilt leaking through. I smiled, serene, and thought of the finale. Their worlds were teetering, and I'd push them off the edge soon. Very soon. The air in our house thickened with tension, a storm brewing under the surface of our daily charade. Emily's gallery show was 3 days away, and she fluttered around like a bird with clipped wings. Nervous, distracted, her fingers tapping incessantly on her phone. Greg stopped by less often, his excuses flimsy. "Work's crazy," he'd mumble, avoiding my eyes. I nodded, all brotherly warmth, while inside I stoked the fire of their undoing. The anonymous post had spread. Neighbors whispered, old friends texted me, "Is everything okay?" And I played dumb, letting the chaos ripple. Victor called me that Wednesday, his voice a low growl of satisfaction. "Got something big," he said. "Greg's other woman? She's married too. To a cop." I nearly dropped the phone. The second woman, Lydia, a blonde he'd met at his gym, had her own secrets, and her husband, Officer Daniel Reese, was a bulldog of a man. All muscle and zero patience. Victor had tracked their meetups. Cheap motels, late-night texts, a mirror of Greg's dance with Emily. The irony was delicious. My brother, juggling 2 lies, oblivious to the noose tightening. I decided to nudge that noose. Using another burner, I sent Lydia a message. "Your husband deserves to know about Greg. No threats, just a seed." Victor confirmed she read it. Her car sped out of her driveway an hour later, headed to Greg's apartment. I pictured the scene. Her panic, his stammering excuses. Meanwhile, I fed Emily's stress. "Heard the gallery owners rethinking the lineup," I said casually over breakfast, watching her fork freeze midair. "Nonsense," she snapped, but her eyes betrayed her. Darting, haunted. That night, I sat in my office, Mia asleep upstairs, and reviewed Victor's latest haul. Audio of Greg begging Lydia to keep it quiet. Photos of Emily pacing outside the gallery, her face a mask of dread. The pieces were aligning, a symphony of ruin-eyed conduct. I leaned back, sipping bourbon, and let the plan sharpen. Greg's ego would be his pyre. Emily's pride, her scaffold. And Officer Reese? He'd be the match. Thursday morning, the gallery owner called Emily. I overheard her side. Voice tight. Words clipped. "What do you mean, concerns? My work's original." She slammed the phone down, muttering about jealous hacks, then stormed off to fix it. I knew the seed I'd planted had sprouted. The owner wouldn't cut her, not yet, but the doubt gnawed at her confidence. She'd always craved validation. Every photo a plea for applause, and now it wavered. I smiled into my coffee, picturing her unraveling at the seams. Greg showed up that afternoon, unannounced, his truck rumbling into our driveway. He looked like he hadn't slept, eyes bloodshot, jaw twitching. "Need to talk," he said, brushing past me into the kitchen. I offered him a beer, all calm hospitality, while he rambled about some crazy chick harassing him. Lydia, no doubt. He didn't mention Emily, but his fidgeting screamed guilt. "You ever get anonymous texts?" he asked, voice low. I shrugged. "Spam, probably. Ignore it." He nodded, unconvinced, and left in a hurry. Victor tailed him. Greg met Lydia in a park, their argument loud enough to turn heads. Her gesticulating, him pacing. Perfect. I sent Reese a package that evening. No note, just a USB with select photos and a single audio clip of Greg boasting about his girls. I mailed it from a Dropbox across town, gloved hand steady. Reese wouldn't trace it, not with his temper. I imagined him listening, fists clenching, a bull ready to charge. At home, Emily returned late, mascara smudged, claiming a long meeting. I cooked pasta, asked about her day, and watched her lie through her teeth. Mia chattered about a school play, oblivious to the fault lines under our feet. I kissed her goodnight, then sat in the dark, plotting the next move. The show was tomorrow, Emily's pinnacle, Greg's trap. I'd make it unforgettable. Friday dawned gray and heavy, rain pelting Portland like a drumroll to the chaos I'd unleash. Emily left early, her portfolio under her arm. A brittle smile plastered on her face. "Tonight's the night," she said, kissing my cheek. "Wish me luck." I did, voice smooth as glass, and watched her drive off to the gallery. I took Mia to school, her chatter a fleeting bomb, then called Victor. "Ready." He grunted assent. We had work to do. The gallery was a sleek space downtown, all white walls and pretentious lighting. Emily's photos, moody landscapes, candid portraits, lined the room, her name in bold on a placard. Guests milled about, sipping wine, murmuring praise. I arrived late, blending into the crowd, a shadow in a suit. She didn't notice me at first, too busy basking in applause. Then I saw Greg, slipping in through a side door, his eyes darting. Idiot. He couldn't stay away, drawn to her like a moth to flame. Victor had rigged a surprise. A projector, hacked into the gallery system, cued with a slideshow I'd curated, blurry shots of Greg and Emily, snippets of their texts, audio of his bar boasts. Nothing explicit, just suggestive enough to spark whispers. I nodded to Victor across the room, and he flipped the switch. The screen flickered, and there they were, our little secret, frozen in pixels, Greg's voice slurring through speakers. The crowd hushed, then buzzed, heads turning to Emily. She froze, wineglass trembling, her face a mask of horror. Greg bolted for the exit, but Reese was waiting. Victor had tipped him off. The cop loomed in the doorway, all fury and muscle, and grabbed Greg by the collar. "You my wife's boyfriend?" he roared, loud enough to silence the room. Emily's gasp cut through the air as Reese dragged Greg outside, fists flying before anyone could intervene. I stood back, sipping champagne, watching her world collapse. The gallery dissolved into chaos. Guests gawked, phones out, recording Reese pummeling Greg in the street, grunts and shouts echoing off the brick walls. Emily ran after them, screaming, "Stop it!" But her voice drowned in the spectacle. I stayed inside, feigning shock for a few onlookers, muttering, "What's happening?" while my pulse thrummed with triumph. The slideshow looped, each frame a nail in her coffin, and whispers turned to accusations. "Is that her brother-in-law? Did she know?" She stumbled back in, hair wild, eyes red, and spotted me. "Jacob, help him!" she cried, grabbing my arm. I pulled free, cold as stone. "Help who?" I asked, voice flat. She blinked, confusion warring with panic, then turned as the gallery owner approached, his face grim. "We need to talk," he said, steering her away. I knew what came next. Her show was tainted, her reputation teetering. I slipped out, the rain a curtain to my exit. Victor met me at the car. "Reese took Greg to the station," he said. "Lydia's there too." Full meltdown. I nodded, picturing the scene. Greg bruised and cuffed, Lydia sobbing, Reese raging. Perfect storm. I drove home, the wipers slashing through the downpour, and found Mia with the babysitter. "Where's Mommy?" she asked. "Working late," I lied, tucking her in. The lie was a shield, for now. Emily didn't come home that night. She texted once, "Need space," and I didn't reply. I sat in our bedroom, her perfume still lingering, and opened the hidden drive. Years of trust, shredded in months. I wasn't done. Greg's beating was just the appetizer. Emily's fall, the main course. I'd saved the best, the cruelest, for last. Saturday morning, the fallout spread like wildfire. Local blogs posted grainy footage of the gallery brawl, tagging Emily's name. Her phone buzzed endlessly on the counter. She'd left it behind. A rookie mistake. I scrolled through. Missed calls from the gallery, her assistant, even her parents. Texts begged for explanations. What's going on? Call me. I deleted them all, then powered it off. She'd faced the mess blind. Greg called from a holding cell, voice hoarse. Jake. I'm in deep. Reese thinks I'm some predator. Bail me out. I let him ramble, then said, can't. Busy with Mia. He cursed, pleaded, but I hung up. Victor confirmed Reese had filed assault charges. Greg's own fault for swinging back, and Lydia's confession had sealed it. His truck sat impounded, his life a wreckage. I felt no pity, only a cold satisfaction. Emily slunk in at noon, disheveled, her bravado gone. We need to talk, she said, voice trembling. I stared at her, silent, letting her squirm. It's not what you think, she started, but I cut her off. I saw you. With him. Her mouth opened, closed, a fish gasping on land. She didn't deny it, just sank onto the couch, head in hands. I stood over her, years of love curdling into contempt. Mia's at a friend's, I said. Pack your things. She cried then, ugly sobs, but I walked away. The revenge wasn't over. I'd saved a final twist. Victor had tracked her old college rival, Sarah, a photographer with a grudge. I'd sent Sarah Emily's portfolio, half-stolen ideas from years ago, weeks back, anonymously. Today, Sarah would publish a scathing exposé. Time to hit when Emily was weakest. I poured a coffee, listening to her pack, and waited for the world to finish what I'd started. Emily's departure was a quiet implosion. She dragged a suitcase to the door, her eyes puffy, her voice a whisper. I'll call about Mia. I didn't respond, just watched her step into the rain, her figure shrinking down the driveway. The house felt hollow without her chaos, but I welcomed the silence. It was mine to shape now. Mia came home that afternoon, asking, Where's Mommy? I knelt, smoothed her hair and said, She's on a trip for work, just us for a while. Her trust broke my heart, but I'd shield her from the wreckage as long as I could. Victor called with an update. Sarah's exposé had dropped online, a brutal dissection of Emily's career. Titled Borrowed Brilliance, it laid out side-by-side comparisons. Emily's photos next to obscure works she'd adapted years ago, credited to others. Sarah's venom was surgical, accusing her of coasting on theft. Her gallery show a fraud. Comments exploded. Disgraceful. What a hack. I read it over dinner, Mia coloring beside me, and felt the first real smile in weeks. Emily's pride, her lifeblood, was bleeding out. Greg's fate darkened too. Reese had dug into his life, uncovering the burner phone, the texts, the lies. Lydia's husband wasn't just angry. He was vengeful, pushing for every charge possible. Harassment, trespassing, even a flimsy fraud claim tied to that truck loan I'd given Greg. Victor sent me a photo. Greg in an orange jumpsuit, head down, awaiting a hearing. I saved it, a trophy of his fall. He'd called twice more, begging, but I let the voicemails pile up unanswered. I wasn't done. The gallery fiasco and Sarah's piece were public wounds, but I wanted something personal, a scar they'd carry forever. I sifted through Victor's files again, hunting for the perfect barb. Then I found it. A video, grainy but clear, from a motel security cam. Emily and Greg, laughing, stumbling into a room, her voice slurring. Jake's so boring. It wasn't just betrayal. It was disdain, captured forever. I held it like a loaded gun, waiting for the right moment. Sunday, the storm broke wider. Emily's assistant quit via a public post, calling her toxic and hinting at secrets she'd covered up. Clients canceled shoots. Her inbox, still synced to our shared cloud, flooded with refunds and outrage. I watched it unfold from my laptop, Mia napping upstairs, and marveled at how fast her empire crumbled. She'd built it on charisma and lies, and I'd toppled it with whispers and truth. Greg's hearing was Monday. Victor attended, texting me updates. He's a mess. Pleaded guilty to assault, cut a deal. Probation, fines, a record. His swagger was gone, replaced by a hunched figure shuffling out of court. Reese wasn't satisfied. He'd started a blog, Cheated Justice, posting about the creep who ruined my marriage. Greg's face was plastered there, a pariah in pixels. I sipped coffee, imagining his panic, and felt the weight of my revenge settle deeper. Emily showed up that evening, unannounced, her car idling in the driveway. "I need to see Mia," she said, voice raw. I blocked the door. "Not now. She's asleep." Her eyes narrowed. "You did this, didn't you?" The gallery, the article. "I cut her off." "You did this. Both of you." She stared, searching for the man she'd known. But he was gone. She left without a fight, defeated, and I locked the door behind her. That night, I uploaded the motel video, not publicly, not yet. I sent it to Greg's gym buddies, Lydia, and a few of Emily's old college friends, all from an untraceable email. No note, just the clip, her laugh, his smirk, her boring jab at me. Let them see who they really were. I pictured their reactions. Shock, disgust, betrayal, and leaned back, the bourbon warm in my hand. The endgame was near. Tuesday, the video spread like a virus. Victor tracked it. Gym buddies shared it in group chats. Lydia forwarded it to Reese. College friends posted cryptic rants about fake people. Emily's phone, still in my possession, lit up with texts. "How could you? You're disgusting." I didn't read them all, just let the pile grow, a monument to her ruin. Greg called again, his voice a wreck. "Jake, what's this video? You've got to stop this." I hung up mid-sentence, his desperation a sweet echo of my own months ago. Reese escalated things. His blog updated with the clip, no names but enough hints, red hair, a pickup truck, for locals to connect dots. Comments named them outright. Emily Carter and Greg Harris, wow. Portland's gossip mill churned, and I stayed silent, letting it consume them. Emily's parents called me, bewildered, asking what happened. "Ask her," I said, and hung up. They'd been my family too, but collateral damage was inevitable. Mia asked about her mom again, her brow furrowed. "She's busy, sweetheart," I said, hating the lie but needing it. I took her to the park, her laughter a lifeline, and planned the final blow. Emily's gallery show had been her peak. I'd make it her grave. I contacted a local printer, ordered posters. Stills from the video, her face clear, captioned, "Our little secret," and paid cash, no trace. Victor would handle distribution. Bus stops, her studio, Greg's haunts. Public shame, permanent and inescapable. I cooked dinner, Mia chattering about school, and felt a strange peace. The revenge wasn't joy, it was justice, cold and sharp. Emily and Greg had taken my trust, my family, my dignity. I'd taken their lives, not with fists or threats, but with their own ugliness, turned against them. The posters would hit tomorrow. I slept soundly, dreaming of their faces when they saw. Wednesday morning, Portland woke to my handiwork. Victor texted photos. Posters plastered on lampposts, taped to coffee shop windows, fluttering in the wind near Greg's gym. Emily's laugh, frozen in print, stared out at the city she'd charmed, now her judge. I drove Mia to school, passing one near the park. Her mother's eyes locked on mine, a ghost of her betrayal. I felt no guilt, only a grim satisfaction. The reckoning had landed. Emily called from a new number, hysterical. "Jacob, what have you done? Take them down." Her voice cracked, a stranger's now. "I didn't make that video," I said, calm as ice. "You did." She sobbed, begged, but I ended the call and blocked her. Greg's turn came next. His boss fired him, citing reputation issues, and his landlord evicted him, spooked by Reese's threats. Victor saw him loading his truck, head down, a man unmoored. The city buzzed. Strangers approached me at the grocery store, offering awkward sympathy. "Heard about your wife, man. Rough." I nodded, played the wounded husband, and let the narrative solidify. Emily the villain, Greg the fool, me the survivor. Mia's teacher pulled me aside, concerned. Rumors had reached the school. "We'll manage," I said, and she didn't press. "I'd tell Mia the truth someday," softened, but not yet. That night, I burned Emily's leftover prints. Years of her art, ash in the backyard. The flames danced, a funeral pyre for our past. Victor called. "They're broken. She's crashing with a friend. He's couch surfing." I thanked him, paid his final fee, and sat in the dark. The revenge was complete, their lives rubble at my feet. I'd rebuilt mine, Mia, my home, my quiet order. They'd never touch it again. Weeks passed, scars settling into the new normal. Emily vanished from Portland. Her studio shuttered, her name a whisper of scandal. Word reached me through a mutual friend. She'd moved to Seattle, chasing a fresh start, but clients wouldn't touch her. Sarah's expose and those posters lingered online. A digital brand. Greg fared worse. Probation tethered him, his truck sold to pay fines, his friends gone. Reese's blog kept him in the crosshairs. A punching bag for a cop's rage. Mia adapted, her questions about her mom fading to a quiet ache. I enrolled her in art classes. Her choice, not Emily's shadow, and watched her bloom, my anchor in the storm I'd weathered. The house felt lighter, cleansed of their ghosts. I sold Emily's ring, used the cash to repaint the walls, erasing her colors. Friends rallied around me, their support a balm I hadn't expected. "You're better off," they'd say, and I agreed, the weight of betrayal lifting. One night, Greg showed up, a shadow of himself, thin, unshaven, eyes hollow. "I'm sorry, Jake," he croaked, standing on my porch. I stared, unyielding. "You're not my brother anymore." He flinched, nodded, and shuffled away, the rain swallowing him. Emily sent a letter days later, no apologies, just a plea to see Mia. I burned it unread. They'd lost that right, their choices a wall between us. I stood in my kitchen, Mia's laughter drifting from her room, and felt the end of it. Revenge hadn't healed me. It had cleared the rot, made space for something new. I'd torn them down, brick by brick, and built myself back up. The cruelty was theirs, the victory mine. I poured a bourbon, toasted the silence, and let them fade into the past where they belonged.